You've heard of the movie The Godfather? Well, here we're talking to the Podfather, Darrin Bentley, the man who knows everything about podcasting. What's up, Darrin?
How are you, man?
I'm living
Good
the
to be
dream.
here.
I'm so excited to talk to you because, man, you've been around for a while. You know what's up, but you still look so young, by the way. But I'm excited to chat about podcasting, marketing, etc. Why don't we go ahead and let's just talk. Let's just talk. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I think it's very impressive, and I cannot wait to get this conversation going.
Cool, man. Well, first off, thanks for having me. Yeah, I've been doing this podcasting thing for a little while now, a little over a decade. And I feel from a marketing perspective, I look at podcasting as one of the most effective marketing tools out there. It enables you to, the barrier of entry is virtually nothing. It enables you to connect with an audience and your prospective clients in a very intimate way, more so than most other methods that I've seen, including YouTube as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing this for, like I said, over a decade. I had a podcast about 10, 11 years ago where I was interviewing some successful folks. It was called Big Wig Nation. I was speaking with people like James Altucher, Robert Kiyosaki, Darren Hardy, Gary Vaynerchuk, folks like that. Just having really deep and in-depth conversations. And I started working with some other folks. One person in particular, we started working, we built out, he wanted to be a coach. And the podcast, we were successfully able to use that as our only lead channel for about close to 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we generated, within the first year, we did like 2.5 mil, and then we went up from there. And that was mainly on the back of an organic podcast. So when podcasting is done right, it can be a very, very effective marketing tool for sure.
Ooh, I like that. I like going from 0 to 2+ million. I like that based on just one thing that you've added value on. So, wow, that blows me away. Let's get to the fundamentals then. Why wouldn't someone do podcasting? Because I'm a huge advocate for it. We in 2020 and 21 and 22, we had a podcast and it was just very specific. And then we stopped, which we were done, I fully admit. And then now we've gotten back into it, and it's totally revolutionized our business in a very short time. Why wouldn't someone do podcasting? I'm totally confused. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think why most people don't do it is because they think, number one, it's either overcrowded, or number two, that it's going to be overwhelming for them, that it's going to be a big time commitment. Or number three, they may think that, it's a very expensive and they have to have a studio and they have to have all kinds of thousands of dollars in equipment. And the reality is, none of that is accurate. None of that is true. You can start a podcast with a very inexpensive USB mic if you want. When we look at the idea of it being overcrowded, I mean, that's the farthest from the truth. It really is. In comparison to YouTube, I mean, statistically, it's a very, very small percentage compared to the amount of YouTube channels there are versus podcasts.
And you could repurpose it. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You could repurpose all the content. It can be video repurposed, audio repurposed, little snippets for, tiny little social media, let's say TikTok, and the written word. You could, transcripts. It could be repurposed. I think that adds a lot of value to a business owner. So, all right, I got you. Let's say someone's gotten over the hump of deciding to do a podcast. What would you say are some of the kind of the key elements that they need to really get going to become successful, just like you and Gary Vee and whomever,
Well, I think it starts with the foundation, right? You want to know who it is that you're talking to. And I think a lot of folks, they think they're going to start a podcast and they kind of go out guns blazing. And the reality is, I'm all about progress, not perfection, right? Because when people try too hard to get it perfect, they basically never do anything. So I'm all about taking action. But the reality is, if you don't have a firm idea of who you're talking to, you're not even going to know what to say to those people. So what I'm saying, understanding who your avatar is, who your audience is, who your prospects are, understanding what are their pain points, what are they struggling with, what are they, their biggest challenges, goals, dreams, aspirations, all of those things, and being able to create a compelling premise for a show that is going to speak to those people. That's really where it starts.
Wow. So okay, we'll use us as a case example. We're probably a great case example. We know that our avatar is really a solopreneur, let's say, 0 to maybe 10 employees, but really 0 to, let's say, 2 employees, usually a spouse, right? We've just started a podcast, redone our podcast, re-engineered, reimagined it, right? So what tools do you think, now that we've started, let's just say, we're getting going, we're kind of getting some traction, what are some tools you think we need to kind of enhance our podcast? You can talk about software, hardware, etc.
Well, tools, the great thing about podcasting is it's really less about things like that. Obviously, you want to have good sound quality, good video quality if you're doing a video podcast. Riverside FM is a pretty solid platform most of the time. Sometimes it gets a little wonky.
Yeah.
And I think, it really comes down to just having the right host, a host that is reliable, and, being on all of the possible platforms that you could be on with your podcast, because there are a ton of different platforms to be on.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're going to get on a platform, you're going to put your podcast out, you want to get in front of as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And there are tons of platforms that, people really like, and they consume their podcast content in different ways. It's not just about Apple or Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
There's things like Castbox and Player FM and all kinds of different other podcasting apps that, people just really like for one reason or another.
Well, we're on, I think, 7 different ones. Would you say that's enough, or should we be striving for more?
You should be striving for as many as humanly possible.
Mm.
Because they're free to get on.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of finding them, identifying them, and then getting on them. And I think, do you know who your podcast host is?
By that, hold on, help me.
Hosting company.
We use Anchor for our kind of initial stuff. Then we use Fusebox for our internet, for our website, and then Spotify for our quasi marketing, if you will.
Okay, so Anchor, I'm not a huge fan of Anchor personally. I like Buzzsprout because, like, Libsyn would probably be my choice, my hosting platform of choice, but that's really for more intermediate to like higher level podcasts, because there's a lot of different things that you could do, a lot of different tools that they have. But Buzzsprout is a really great place for most people to start. And I think, I don't remember the exact number, but when you put your podcast on Buzzsprout, it automatically puts it on, like, I think about 17 or 18 different platforms. So wow. It's very easy to, like, just putting it on there and then just submitting to all these different platforms all at once. Libsyn doesn't. With Libsyn, you can't do that. I mean, you have to kind of go in and do most of them manually. So Buzzsprout really makes it easy for a lot of people.
Wow. And one of our contacts was one of the co-founders in Buzzsprout. I should probably talk to him. Wow. Okay. I like that. And I like also going back to what you say, if it's not perfect, it's okay. Because who knows, maybe you'll strive for perfection. That's partially why I asked that question, because I think some of the tools, if you've gotten even if you're just starting a podcast, some of the tools can help you get to the next level. And that's, I guess, you've already added value to me. Hopefully some of the viewers and listeners are going to take heed to that. That's pretty awesome. So then let's say we've used some of those tools, Buzzsprout or whatever the case is. What are some of the ways that you think makes sense as far as marketing a podcast that, let's say I'm a real estate agent. I want to start really marketing my podcast that's in its early stages.
Well, I'd say that the best way to start, especially for someone like that, an avatar like that, is taking your content. So let's assume that you're doing a video, and I think that there's really no good reason why anyone who's doing a podcast shouldn't do it on video.
Totally, yeah.
Take that, turn it into like reels, turn it into shorts, and you want to obviously take those 30-second to a minute clips to promote the show, but it's really more about bringing awareness, right? It's awareness to who you are, what your message is, what people are going to get out of consuming the content, and then draw them obviously to the longer form content. So using like snippets and videos and things like that to really promote the show, and just come up with like a really compelling hook. Like If possible, making it a complete thought. I know 30 seconds to a minute is a tough, it's a short amount of time, but you can definitely focus on pulling out something that's really going to like suck people in if you know who you're talking to.
Yeah, but
And
let's say I'm too lazy though. I'm a business owner. I have too many things to do. Does your firm, does Darrin Bentley's firm then do that as an example, or what would you suggest as far as labor to help me in that regard?
There's a lot of different things. I do work with a small handful of folks, higher level players typically in different capacities. But in terms of like doing stuff like that, I mean, there's all kinds of, AI has really made a lot of strides. You can do a lot with AI. So for example, even with Riverside has something they call, I think it's called Magic Clips, yeah, AI will allow you to take an interview and chop it up into like 10 little sections that you could use to promote the podcast. And the reality is AI, is great as it is, and I'm a big advocate of it, I use it all the time, it's still not there just yet. So if you create 10 clips, you might get one or two that are usable, but you can still do it manually within there. If you don't have a team member, somebody who could do that stuff for you, I would suggest like looking on places like maybe Fiverr or Upwork, just like, getting a VA, who could do all those things. It's very easy to do, and it's not super time consuming. The one thing though I recommend is anybody, you don't want to learn how to be like a video editor and a marketer and all these things. I say, stay in your zone of genius and hire somebody else to do that stuff, because it's just not a good spend of your time.
Yeah. I think it's a necessity having a virtual assistant that can help with a podcast. So, and we use for our tools, as I understand it, at least, I don't do it by the way, but my staff uses we use Riverside, number one, and then number two, I believe we use their Magic Clips, and then we use Opus Clips, I believe, and then our own AI. We've been doing AI since 2018, well, really 2010, but 2018. So we kind of meld them all together, and that's what now throws out the different clips on the different platforms. But I think it's a no-brainer, just like you said, to have someone who can help you. It's just as important as buying a computer or buying a phone. You have to have an assistant. I really do agree with that. And VAs are cheap. You can sometimes get VAs for $3 an hour, all the way, who knows, to $12 an hour that can help add value to your podcast.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, when you think about it, it's like, oh man, a person who's going to charge $3-4 an hour, how good are they going to be? Well, you'd be very, very surprised, right? It really comes down to you understanding like what is the scope of the project, what is the work that you need, and if you're obviously you might need to go through several people before you find the right one. If you're clear in your communication, you could definitely get somebody who could do most of these things for $5 to $8 an hour and do a really, really good job as well.
And you're helping them in a community where they might not make more than $2 normally. So it's a big deal. I used to feel guilty having VAs. We started in '99 using VAs, and I felt guilty until, then I noticed that, man, they're really happy that they're getting paid whatever, and they're happy they have a job. They're helping. It's a no-brainer to have a virtual assistant. We have a team of 6 now, so it's a no-brainer to have a virtual assistant.
Absolutely agree with that, for sure.
So now, okay, so let's say I'm let's say a middle producer of podcasts. I don't even know what that would be. So what are some suggestions for someone who's been podcasting for, let's say, 4 years, if that's a middle producer? I don't know. What are your thoughts there to maybe take them to the next level? And I'm thinking of a couple people who I know have been around for a few years, and they kind of want to take it to the next level. What are some thoughts there?
So you're saying somebody who's been podcasting for a couple of years and they want to just grow their show?
Exactly.
Well, there's a lot of different things, right? And there's a lot of variables there that I don't know. So it's really hard to answer. I mean, The one thing that I do say is, if anyone is considering getting into podcasting, typically I think it is 80%, between 70 and 80% of podcasters are not going to make it past the 7th episode. Yeah. So I encourage anyone who's considering starting a podcast, which, to be honest, everyone listening should be thinking about it, right? I think that you want to definitely know that this is a long play. This is not something like where you're just gonna You're not going to be an overnight success. You're going to suck really bad in the beginning. And you got to understand that it's a long play, that like, you want to put in the time, the dedication. It takes a long time to really build an audience. Now, when I'm building podcasts from the ground up with some of the clients that I work with, foundationally, I'm going to start with building out an effective and compelling premise. I'm going to start with understanding who is your ideal listener, i.e., who is your ideal buyer, right? Who's your ideal prospect? Those things, understanding that is very, very important before you even consider starting a podcast. But as far as like, let's just say that you have somebody that has been podcasting for 2 years, they're not getting a lot of, listens or views or whatever. There's a lot of different things that they can do. Like, you have to ask yourself, are they effectively promoting a podcast? So promoting a podcast, you make your magic clips and then you kind of put them out there on Instagram or wherever. Well, I see a lot of people, and I know some people who have been at this for a long time. And I just saw one yesterday where they made a post on Facebook about their podcast episode, and they made it all about the guest. And that's something that you should never do that. Nobody's going to click on it. Nobody really gives a crap about who your guest is, unless it's Gary Vaynerchuk or Grant Cardone
or Darrin Bentley or Darrin Bentley
or Darrin Bentley. Unless it's somebody who is a notable guest, it's really not going to make a whole lot of sense to use their, just like try to use their name and what, like their experience and things like that. People are very selfish, right? And it has to be all about them. So typically in a post like that, like I saw this post that was like, this girl, Jane, is, she's amazing at this and that. And, I just did a podcast and we talked about this. No, what you really want to do is you want to make a post that's going to talk about a problem that your audience is struggling with, that they're suffering with, some kind of challenge. And then weave that into, by the way, I had a conversation with this person about exactly this. And then, you just lay out, we talked about this, this, and this, and how to not do this, how to get this without doing that, all those like things. That's really the best way to promote. If you look online, keep an eye out. You'll see a lot of people will be like, listen to my podcast. Oh, I just did a podcast. Check this out with this person. No, you want to really make it about the person. People are selfish and they want to, their time is a very valuable asset. So they have to understand why they need to listen. So that's your job to communicate that effectively to get them to listen.
Dude, the Podfather comes through on that. Wow, that hits me. That really hits me hard. I'm glad you mentioned that, not only for me, but also probably for the viewers and listeners here. By the way, we're in the Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. My name's Kenneth French. Luckily, we have Darrin Bentley, the Podfather, here. I have a couple more questions as we kind of come to a close. So I don't know if you could say the client's name, but it sounds like you completely changed the future, I'll say, of one of our friends, who's one of your clients, as far as podcasting. You really helped her podcast. What can you tell little secrets that you did maybe on that podcast and some other podcasts that have totally changed the life of some of the podcasters with whom you've worked?
Sure. Again, it comes down to the foundational piece. It comes down to the first place to start is really understanding what are your goals with a podcast? What are you trying to achieve or accomplish with a podcast? Once you know that, then the next step is really identifying again who is your perfect listener. What are their challenges, struggles, dreams, goals, aspirations, like all of those things. And then obviously coming up with a compelling premise for a show. What is going to differentiate your show from a sea of other podcasts out there? Why are people going to want to listen? And they need to understand that, in a very deep and authentic way. Authenticity is another big thing that I really encourage. Like I also say that people don't want to really listen. You don't want to be on the podcast as the expert. The way that you really want to do it as a podcast host to really get people to kind of come together is it's almost like you and your listeners are kind of on a journey together, right? You're trying to learn something together. if people want answers, they'll go to ChatGPT or Google. They're not necessarily looking for answers. They're looking for some guidance, but they're also looking to understand, like, what is it that you can help them with, and you're going to take them on a journey versus you trying to come on and say, like, I'm the expert, I have all the answers. You want to actually, I don't want to say you don't want to act like you have all the answers, but it's almost like an exploratory thing, right? The other thing is, I say, have a conversation. I encourage everyone that I work with to, like, because what happens, a lot of people will get on the mic, and once they hit record, they go into podcast voice, right? They're the podcaster. I encourage people to really think and almost act as if you are talking to one person. So if you could picture one person in your mind that you're having a conversation with, because great podcasts are, you listen to them and you almost feel like, you're a fly on the wall, right? It's almost like a conversation between two people in a coffee shop. That's what creates engaging content. That's why Joe Rogan can do a 3-hour podcast, and so many people are going to listen because they feel like they're part of the conversation. They feel like they know Joe, like they're friends with him. And that's very intentional. And that's what you need to do, I think, to really create a compelling podcast.
Holy mackerel, that was very good, man. Everything you've said is just, it's hitting home, and adding value to me. Again, hopefully it's adding value to the people who are watching and listening. So I know you're not really looking for clients per se, and if you are, you're looking for big hitters, and we have some big hitters who don't have podcasts, or I think who want to better their podcast. Even if that's the case, let's pretend you did want to market to them. How do we get a hold of you, or how do they get a hold of you if they are looking for some help?
So I would say that if there was somebody again, I do only work with a handful of people right now, and I have a very limited capacity. I'm not like, this isn't a marketing ploy. I'm not like, scarcity and things like that. It's just a capacity thing, right? Because I do go deep with the folks that I work with. I'd say, I'm happy to give you my email address. I am working on a website. It's not up yet. It might be up by the time this is actually out there, which would be darrinbentley.com. Very simple, DARRINBENTLEY.com. But anybody who might potentially be a good fit, you could shoot me an email. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. If I can't help you, I'm happy to connect you with someone who can. My email address is Bentley, BENTLEY .Darrin, DARRIN @gmail.com.
Perfect. Thanks. Because who knows? I mean, based on our conversation, I could totally see someone saying, "Hey, that dude adds value. The guy's a stud. He's the Podfather." Love that, by the way. I'll take credit for it, even though I didn't initiate it. What's in the last couple minutes we have? What's something that you think someone who's either a brand new podcaster or someone who's an experienced podcaster should think about that we have not already talked about?
Well, I would say that for the new podcaster, go back to the podcast that you listen to, the podcast that you really like the most, the ones that resonate with you the most, and learn from them. Think about what are the things about that podcast that really pull you in, that hook you in, and steal it, right? I say that steal it ethically. I don't say steal it, literally, but use that because what are the podcasts that are holding your attention? Why are they holding your attention? What is it that makes you want to keep coming back to that podcast? And, just like take notes of the things from different shows that really speak to you, and think about how you can bring that into your own podcast.
Holy mackerel. Okay. What about the, experienced person? Because you said that's kind of for the newer one. What about someone who's experienced? What's something we haven't gone over that can add value to someone who's pretty experienced podcaster?
I'd say number one, the same thing, right? Like I still would encourage people to do that. But also look at some of the bigger podcasts, look at some of their marketing methods, look at how they're putting their stuff out there. There's a lot that you could learn from that. Some of the bigger shows really have it down in terms of how they're marketing. So a great place would be like looking at Instagram, looking at some of the bigger shows, how they're marketing with their videos on Instagram, as well as YouTube. Those are two really good platforms where you can get some really good ideas from a marketing perspective, on how you'd want to promote your podcast, because they know what they're doing and they're doing a great job at it, most of them.
Nice. Do you have any specific suggestions of, shows that you think are really good, or do you think they should kind of customize to their liking?
I'd say customize definitely to their liking, because it's got to really resonate with them.
Yeah.
I love, Andy Frisella's podcast. I know a lot of people love it, and I know a lot of people hate it. He's a very polarizing guy. So what I would suggest is going to definitely be different from what a lot of your listeners might be consuming.
Yeah.
I would say just look at your, the top 3 or 5 podcasts that you're listening to right now, and, just spend some time going through the content, spend some time going through how they're promoting the show. And I think you're going to get a lot from that, a lot more than you think you would.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think what I would say in kind of closing, I would say, just like you say, there's so few people that make it past the 9th, 10th episode. What I would say is get them in the can, right? Get whatever. We have a ton in the can. But what I mean is get in the can by doing them and having them kind of wait and reserve and then publishing them. I think the more you get, you're going to end up getting so much better at the end of those. Let's say you've done 20, you'll get really good at 15 to 20, and then you'll improve. But if you get them all recorded, all ready for publishing, you'll be so much better off, because you won't stop at the first or second one. You'll already have them in the can, and then hopefully you'll keep going after that. And what I've already seen quickly, because we're now doing them daily, man, you start getting traction pretty quickly, and then down the road you'll really get traction. Like you say, it's a long game.
It's a long game, and I think, obviously the more that you do anything, the better that you get at it. But I'll tell you, especially when you're doing interview podcasts, it's really going to help you be able to, come up with your points better, your talking points, really dial in how you open the show, like coming up with really compelling hooks that are going to pull people in. It's the more you do anything, the better that you're going to get. I just think that doing a podcast, especially an interview podcast, is just really going to give you so much more than just having those conversations, because you're also opening up yourself to, and a lot of people don't really think about this part as much, right? You're opening yourself up to having conversations with people who normally wouldn't give you their time.
I know, that's so true, huh? You would never talk to me if we weren't doing a podcast, because you're big and important. I'm kind of a loser.
You're funny. No, it's very true. I mean, I have friends that I've made through podcasting, that I'm still friends with 10, 11, 12 years ago now. So podcasting has really changed my life in many, many ways. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about as much. Just opening the door. When you have a platform, and it doesn't matter how many listeners you have, when you have a platform where you could reach out, and now all of a sudden you could talk to someone who normally wouldn't give you the time of day, that puts you in a really powerful position.
100%, because now I've gotten to know your story, and now I feel totally comfortable referring you to the couple people I've already mentioned, because I know your story, I know you know what's up, and then I know you can add value to this guy or these 2 guys I'm thinking of specifically. And then because of that comfort, we've spent 45 minutes together, I'm pretty comfortable with you, and it adds up. And that I would say that is the biggest thing of all this podcasting, because you're exactly right. You get in front of people, you hear their story where you probably wouldn't have if you weren't doing podcasts.
And yeah, absolutely. And there's one other thing too that you got to think about that a lot of people also don't think about. And there's I see seedy people, like they do this. It's not cool, but there are ways to do it where it's not seedy, like what I'm talking about, where let's say that you can have your ideal prospect, you can invite them onto a podcast, and ultimately, someone who's a good fit, you could sell them into your products or programs. Now, I see some people that do it in a very seedy way, and they're almost making the podcast like the podcast doesn't matter. They're just trying to get people in. I would never advocate doing that. It's got to be about adding value. Yeah. But I know a lot of people that actually get a lot of clients, directly from having them on the podcast. They're getting to know each other through the podcast. So it's another potential funnel on the back end.
Yeah, I totally get that. It is what it is. I understand. If you're not doing it seedy, I think it's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's land this plane. Once again, Darrin, this has been awesome. You've totally added some value. I feel comfortable referring, you to these 2 guys at a minimum that I was thinking about, even though you're going to give them the stiff arm because you're too important right now, too busy. But dude, you got to get a website. That's funny. You haven't gotten yours. But anyway, Darrin, it's been a pleasure. Totally. You've added some value. Again, this is the Vast Voice telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. My name is Kenneth French with vastsolutionsgroup.com. Man, if you have any questions, please go ahead and email us at info@vastsolutionsgroup.com. And of course, you can email Darrin, the Podfather of podcasting. If you have any questions, reach out to him. If you want to somehow engage him, even though he's pretty busy, I think, who knows, maybe you could twist his arm and become a client of his. But everyone, it's really been a pleasure. And again, Darrin, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, man.